All right, everyone, welcome once again to the Faces of Business. I am your host, Damon Pistolka, and I am excited for our guest today because we have no one more special today than Jason Kruger from Citrin Cooperman. Jason, great to have you back again on the show.
Great. Thanks, Damon. Really appreciate it.
Yep, we hit a little bit of technical difficulties getting going, but now we're here. It's going to be awesome because we're going to be talking about are you profitable and key metrics every manufacturer should monitor. So, Jason, we always like to start out talking a little bit about your background. Let's talk about what you've been up to, how you got into doing what you're doing today, and then we'll get on to key metrics for manufacturers.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you can imagine, my background is in finance and accounting. Cut my teeth in some of the larger national
Yep.
firms here in the US. Most of that time was with Deloitte, which is one of the big four accounting firms. Spent first about 10 years in financial statement audit. But as I was even working with our clients at Deloitte, I saw that, there was a real, the mid, what I would consider the smaller mid-market, companies really were struggling as it relates to the sophistication around and the value they were getting out of the finance and accounting function of their business.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I mean by that is a lot of companies, when they first get started, accounting is a necessary evil, meaning you gotta, you got to invoice, you got to pay your bills, you got to make sure you have enough cash for payroll, and you got to make sure that you could do taxes at the end of every year. And then as they grow, they realize that, it's critical to one, know your numbers, get good information to be able to dig in deeper into the numbers so you can continue to improve your business. That's from an internal perspective, but also if you want to establish banking relationships, if you want to exit at some point in time, having an understanding of what those numbers look like is critical in being able to provide them to third parties. So the first thing that your banker is going to ask you if you want to, if you want financing is, let me see your financials. And the first thing that an investment banker or a potential buyer is going to ask you if you want to sell your company is, let me see your financials, right? Or what do your
Yes.
financials look like? Or what's your EBITDA or something like that. So having your hands around that is critical. So I started a company called Signature Analytics that provided outsourced accounting support for companies on a fractional flexible basis. And so what that means is providing the accounting and financial leadership that these companies really lack, and then filling in the gaps where there might be needs and pain points so that they were able to have good processes to close the books every month, produce good monthly financial reporting, communicate effectively to the bank, really dig deeper into their financial information, which we'll start talking about in a little bit as well. We built that up to about 75 full-time employees, and then we were acquired in November 1st of last year, 2024, and joined by Citrin Cooperman. So just celebrated our 1 year with Citrin Cooperman. We slid right into, they had a service that was very similar and complementary to what we did. And so slid right in. Citrin Cooperman was full service CPA firm that also does supports our clients on a tax perspective, audit, other what we call advisory service lines, consulting service lines. But our focus is the same core, mid-market that I was focused on before, and I've always really been focused on. So a lot of, small startup businesses all the way to the mid-market, companies from 5 million to, 500 million is probably our sweet spot. But I'd say the core of the companies that I work with personally are probably in that 10 to 100 million range, and all shapes, sizes, industries, everything.
Yeah. So, Jason, what do you really like about working in that size or with those size of organizations?
Yeah, I mean, one, you can make an impact more quickly,
Yeah.
and there's a direct line to the business owner in a lot of cases, and decisions can be made more quickly.
Yeah.
And we can really, if we can really establish the processes to get good financial information, we can start to see results very quickly as well. And so there's obviously a lot less red tape, not as not as much complexity as, a Fortune 500 or public company.
Mm-hmm.
But there's tremendous value that can be had by leveraging the financial information to make decisions to achieve the goals that you have as a business owner.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a big deal. So when you first approach or are talking with some of these businesses, what are some of the common points that you see where you guys can come in and really make an impact?
Yeah, it usually starts with cash flow.
Okay.
So, especially in manufacturing, right? Because in manufacturing, a lot of times you're buying the product. So you gotta pay cash out the door.
Yeah.
Then then it goes into inventory. So what I like to say is, what's inventory? It's cash on the shelf, right? So your cash
Mm-hmm.
is now on the shelf in the form of inventory. Then you got to manufacture, you got to go put it through that process. Then you have to sell it. And then you have terms with your customer. So they may pay you in 30, 60, 90 days. So that cash cycle can be very long in the
Yeah.
manufacturing side of things. Now there's ways to improve that through maybe taking deposits from customers up front or something like that. But that cash cycle could be long. So one is, I've talked to several business owners that say, "Hey, look at my financials. It says I'm making money. It says I'm profitable, but I don't have any cash. Where is it?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I say, well, great. Your P&L says you're profitable, but where is your cash? Let's take a look at your balance sheet, and
Yeah.
it's either hung up in inventory, it's either in your AR because you haven't collected or aren't
Yep.
collecting timely. Maybe sometimes you're paying your vendors too quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Or in some cases, your financials are not really accurate and you're you're actually not as profitable as you think you are.
Mm-hmm.
And so for businesses, especially manufacturing, the small mid-size, tracking inventory is one of the biggest challenges.
Yeah.
And if your inventory number is not accurate, your P&L is not accurate. Your cost of
Oh
goods sold
yeah.
is not accurate, which means your margins and then your profitability numbers aren't accurate. And
Yeah.
so really dialing in and making sure you have confidence that an inventory number is critical. And I see that a lot as well.
Yeah. Yeah. That is a great way to look at inventory, though. It is cash on the shelf.
Hmm.
And that the words you just said, I'm profitable, but I don't have any cash is very common across manufacturers, like you said, because you could grow significantly in a year
Hmm.
and all of it is eaten up in cash and AR.
Right.
Or I
And
mean
that's
inventory
where,
and AR.
building a partner with a bank or a financing
Yeah.
institution is important. And again, that's where numbers are important as well, which is one, it's in order to get financing, you want to be able to show good numbers, not just hit print on QuickBooks, but give them a good package that tells the right story. But also, if you have your numbers, you know how much you should be asking for and using, because when you are using somebody else's cash, like a bank, you're still paying interest, and
Mm-hmm.
that deteriorates your profitability too. So being able to maximize and leverage the right amount of cash for growth, but not use or financing, but not use too much where you're throwing, interest out the door either is
Mm-hmm.
important.
Yeah. Yeah. It is a big deal. So when you come in and you talked about processes, now what are some of the processes that you typically would see in a manufacturer that really help to solidify the numbers?
Yeah, so I look at when you look at the financial or accounting cycle of a business, I always look at the day-to-day activities. So, what's our process to invoice? What's
Hmm.
our process to pay bills, right? And so those two processes have a significant impact on cash and cash flow, depending on how you go about those things, what your terms are, what your agreements are with your customers. So breaking it down all the way to, how you negotiate with your customers and vendors is critical from a cash flow perspective. So
Hmm.
having a process, not just an ad hoc, hey, we'll pay bills when we can, we'll invoice, randomly, but what is our process? What are our terms? How often do we invoice? Those types of things. And then having a good process and team to do that effectively and accurately. The second then is the monthly close process, which is, do we have a good process where we can close the books every month quickly and then ultimately produce good monthly financial information? So basic financial statements is the starting point, your balance
Mm-hmm.
sheet, your P&L. We should be doing, throughout the month with most of our clients, we do a weekly cash flow forecasting. We have a tool. So it looks forward to several months, 13-week cash flow. But starting with the basics, the balance sheet and P&L, and then starting from there to start digging into the details.
Yeah.
If you have bank financing, do they have covenants? Let's make sure we're tracking those to make sure that we're not outside of, in non-compliance. Let's start digging into our revenue streams and the cost associated with those to really not understand our margins at the global level, but breaking it down by, let's say, product lines. We understand what products are more profitable than others. That may adjust what products we push more into the marketplace. Really digging into the margin is critical, because a lot of times I'll ask a business owner, hey, what are your margins? And they'll say, well, it's somewhere between 40 and 50%. 40 and 50%, that's a big difference. I
Yeah,
mean,
it is.
if you're talking $10 million company,
Yeah.
1 percentage point in margin is $100,000.
Yeah.
And so we don't want to just say, it's somewhere between here. We want to track it to the percentage, get to a point where we can track it to the percentage point.
Yeah.
And then once we understand that, we can see the trends and we can start to say, okay, now how do we add an extra percent here? What can we do to add an extra percent? And then you'll start to see the results of that hitting the bottom line, the cash flows, those types of things. And so that's really the starting point, is getting a process where you're seeing good data on a monthly basis. And then once you have that, then you can start to say, okay, well, what type of information do I need more frequently, weekly or daily or real time? And that's where you can start to leverage technology and maybe the systems that you're using to be able to provide you with snapshots of information that you might like to see on a real-time basis as well.
Yeah.
So there's a number of different ways we've done that. We're big. We work with a lot of clients on QuickBooks, on NetSuite. We leverage Microsoft Power BI quite a bit to be able to go and extract the data and produce real-time dashboards, those types of things.
Yeah, it is really in manufacturing. If you can there's a huge difference going from monthly to weekly to really understanding what you're doing. And when earlier in my career, I did turnarounds, and when you did turnarounds at a manufacturing company, we would almost essentially close the books every week just to understand where we were at.
Yep.
And you knew, did we make progress or not every week going towards it? Because it is, and it's amazing how that can just those practices, when you need them, are very valuable, but when you're making money, they kind of fall to the wayside because it's like, oh, well, but when you use that weekly true up, not even really a true up, but a weekly check-in on those, and even like you said, real time, especially in a process kind of orient thing, it's huge what it'll do over a year.
Yeah, for sure. And the other thing I kind of hit on before, but is, do you have a good process to track inventory? So that at a minimum, you're getting, solid inventory numbers on a monthly basis. And if you don't have a good process, is it possible to do some sort of regular inventory count to at least get good numbers that you have confidence in moving forward? Because that's what I see all the time, is they rely on the system, but it's not necessarily set up right. It goes off track. They buy new product. It doesn't get entered the right way. And all of a sudden they're relying on numbers that are completely inaccurate and not correct. And it's distorting, everything associated with the business. And that's where they start thinking, I'm super profitable, but where's my money? Well, it's because you're not as profitable as you thought you were. You actually have, you have less inventory and you have more cost of goods sold or something like that.
Well, yeah. And I think that's one of the things that many manufacturers don't realize is how that inventory accuracy really affects the profitability on a P&L basis, right? Because if I'm off high, I'm going one way, and if I'm off low, it's the other.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, I was getting some feedback. I don't know if you were hearing that too, but
Just a little bit, but
yeah,
it
I think I
wasn't bad.
fixed it though.
But talk
Um,
about that a little bit, because I really like what you're saying about inventory accuracy and doing that. Because I think it's a, if we're talking about metrics, really, one of them that I've seen before in people that have a lot of inventory is, what is my inventory accuracy? And
mhm.
both on a per item count basis and even the total dollars. So if you extrapolate that, so
Yeah,
talk about that a little bit, because that's a huge thing for people. And like you said, you walk into how many manufacturing businesses, they go, well, I'm profitable, but I don't have any cash to show for it. What's going on?
yeah, yeah. A couple things for inventory. I mean, the simplest explanation is if your inventory is off by $100, your cost of goods sold is likely off by $100. I mean, they relate. They have a direct correlation between the two, because when you sell a product, it goes from inventory to cost of goods sold, and if it's off by $100, your cost of goods sold is off by $100. One could be in a positive or a negative direction, but it's not accurate. It's not telling you what's the true performance of your business. So
Yeah.
if you're only looking at the P&L and you're saying, oh, well, look at this, and oh, I don't understand, or I don't look at the balance sheet, that can be a big challenge, because you've got to have confidence in the balance, the inventory balance. So that's one, the process, and then it goes into how you establish the processes to account for that. QuickBooks is a great tool, but it's not the best at tracking inventory, right? So there's
Mm-hmm.
other systems or that will bolt on to QuickBooks. There's other systems like NetSuite that is more of an ERP that has
Mm-hmm.
the whole process associated that's much more sophisticated. So that's critical. The other is what we touched on a little bit before is if you have a good processes around inventory and the ordering process, and you can track, you can maximize how the flow of inventory. And so understanding how often inventory turns
Mm-hmm.
within your business is a critical, what I would call KPI, right? Meaning you don't want you want enough inventory to be able to maintain demand, but you don't want too much inventory that, as we talked about before, now I don't have cash because I got too much inventory, or in some cases maybe it goes stale, maybe it goes bad.
Yeah.
And so you risk, the risk of having to discard inventory, and that's a pure write-off at that point as well. So maintaining the right balance. And so each company, each industry, each product or product line is different, but having some level of an understanding of your inventory process to maintain an appropriate inventory level that effectively isn't too much or too little, because it's damaging on both ends from that
Yeah.
perspective.
Yeah. Yeah. I can remember one of the manufacturing companies I was in. I believe the inventory wasn't huge by any means, but it was a few $1,000,000. And by doing a couple things, we redesigned the product lines to get more common inventory, went to Kanban, and we had a great inventory buy, the whole, when you have a great procurement end of your business, and they know the supply chain well, we were able to, over time, we reduced the inventory by 50%, and we
Oh
increased
yeah.
the business. The throughput of the business went up about another 25%. So it really made a huge difference. But the thing about that is the previous owners wanted to keep a lot of inventory because they never wanted to run out.
Hmm.
But what happens when you reduce the items that you really need by, in that case, we were able to do it with design, but you use the Kanban inventory, you actually run out less, even with
Hmm.
less inventory,
Right.
because your suppliers get used to, hey, I'm delivering 100 each week, or 1,000 each week, or 10,000 each week. And it just keeps coming in. And that flow is so critical,
Yeah.
because it makes your life so much easier. And the other thing that happens when you take an inventory, say I've got 40,000 square feet of inventory, and I can cut that in half. Well, what do I
Yeah.
do with the other 20,000 square feet in inventory now? Or that's
Yeah.
not, with full of racks. I can do manufacturing in there. I can do value added work in there, not just store junk.
Yep.
And it's a
Yeah.
huge thing.
Or you
So,
can cut you can move to a smaller facility and save
yep.
a ton on space, you have more room for growth, so you don't
Yeah.
have to move into a larger facility. There's a lot of opportunity and things that can be done there for sure.
But the inventory turns, like you said, is a big, I think that's a metric that a lot of people, if you haven't really thought about that, it's something that can derive a lot of benefits from it when you get that and increase it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And then, during the COVID period when the supply chains were all messed up, that was tough. We had some
Oh
clients
yeah.
that, they didn't know how much to order, right? And so especially if they're getting, fun offshore, China,
Hmm.
whatnot.
Yeah.
And so we had a client that ended up with 3 years worth of inventory
Wow.
because they just were ordering, weren't sure what they were going to get, what they weren't going to get.
Yeah.
And fortunately for them, their product has a long shelf life.
Yeah.
But at the same time, not all of it was good. It really strapped them from a cash position perspective. And it just put a real, and at the same time they were financing, so they had a line of credit, so they're
Yeah.
paying
Yeah.
interest,
Yeah.
and much more interest than they had to be paying because it was all sitting in their inventory for 3 years.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. That's wonderful. Yeah, it is. That is another reason too, when you look at supply chain, is to really think about the long-term costs. I think COVID was one thing that really taught us do I have my entire supply chain coming from the other side of the world all the time, or all of it?
Hmm.
It's the
Hmm.
whole thing there. Do I do 50-50 and really do a balance? Because, I mean, there were out here, I have some friends that ran some pretty large truck upfitters here in the Northwest. They were getting trucks delivered without major components because
Mm.
they needed to keep them going, and the truck
Yeah.
people had, major components that the factory people or the service people had to come out and put on them where they were going. They were drivable, but a lot of the electronics didn't work.
Yeah.
It's just, I mean,
Makes
it's
it a
just
little tough.
crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So that weighing that on the supply chain is pretty interesting. Interesting place, because it does adjust the profitability of your business, but the long
Hmm.
term stability might be outweigh that.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. So, what are some of the fun things you're seeing in manufacturing and accounting right now? Because we're in this world of AI is changing everything, everybody says, but what are some of the
Hmm.
things that you think are really changing, exciting for you on the
Yeah.
forefront of what's happening?
I wouldn't say it's exciting, but the T word, tariffs, that's really created a lot of challenges for
Oh yeah.
the manufacturing space, um, in, companies that manufacture overseas or in China
Yep.
especially.
Yep.
It's been very challenging. I've seen a number, the M&A market in that space. If you're manufacturing, outside of the US, it put a halt to it because, a buyer doesn't know what your company is worth because they don't
Hmm.
know how much your how much your cost of goods sold is gonna, how much
Yeah.
you have to pay for inventory. So
Yeah.
there's no understanding of what your margins are. And so that, there was a number of deals we saw from a M&A perspective that got put on hold. Some of that's kind of starting to hopefully settle down a little bit.
Hmm.
But that was a significant challenge, and really saying, we had a lot of our clients say, okay, we did have an understanding of what our margins were, but now with the tariffs, like what does that mean and how does that impact our business? And so providing them clarity, helping to define and provide clarity on that was a big challenge for us, so that they can ultimately say, okay, now I have the information. Now what decisions should I make? Do I need to go back to, my customers and say, hey, you know what? You give a little. I mean, a lot of our clients said, hey, you give a little, we'll give a little. Let's just get through this together. Those are the ones that
Hmm.
had good relationships with their clients, or find other ways to offset some of those costs, to continue to be as efficient as possible. So that was a big, something big that we saw, within the last 6 months for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I was in a business, what was it 2017, 2018, something like that, when we had the tariffs kicked in the first time. We manufactured solely in China. And one of the things I was thinking about when we were dealing with that earlier this year was the fact that most people don't realize that that's cash you have to pay. I mean, there's just not like that. It doesn't go to some. I mean, I bought it for $1, and if it's the 25% tariff and the boat's coming across, it just went up 25%.
Right.
So a lot of people and you don't realize that you can have containers that are multi-million-dollar containers if it's the right things in them.
Yeah, and if you sell it for $1.50, your margin just got cut in half.
Yeah. So it's one of those things that I don't really. I talked to a lot of people because they didn't understand tariffs and where they got and how it affected. I mean, it literally your product set on the dock until you pay, get them. So it is, and that's like I said, and it takes, what does it take? A week, 14 days, something like that to come across on the water. So it happened on the way over and you're like, oh, I guess I pay that much more.
Yeah. So that was tough, but I think that's also a testament to, the companies that know their numbers and have the information that allows them to be quicker at making decisions that they're confident in, to be able to maneuver through uncertain times. And that's really is, as business owners, we want to have the information to be able to, feel confident that things come up, good, bad, ugly, and we have the ability to maneuver. And if you don't have good financial information, you're running blind and you're just kind of hoping for the best. And that's what makes, in a lot of cases, I talk to business owners, they say, hey, what keeps you up at night? Knowing if we're going to be in business next week, like, do we have enough cash to make payroll on Friday? Right. And so that's why, going back to the cash flow, it's okay. The first thing we want to do to ease that is let's make sure we have an understanding of what your cash flow looks like over the next 13 weeks. Then let's start digging into your business and start understanding some of the metrics that, that allow you to pull some levers to make better decisions.
Yeah, that cash flow is so important, and it does, like you said, a 13-week cash flow will change your world because you can see it coming, at least if you're going to have a problem, and make adjustments. At the very least.
For sure. And you can make adjustments ahead of time. You say, hey, you know what? Okay, well, payroll, payroll is payroll. We know when we're going to pay it, so we got to manage around that. Or I got a big vendor I have to pay on, at this point in time. Okay, well, we have a payment coming in over here. Let's push that one payment back. You can move some things around based on when you make some payments to manage through that and have that visibility to know that, okay, we're set up. We're good for payroll for Friday. Now let's look at the next week and the week after that and so on.
Yeah. I can remember in one of my earlier turnarounds, I was fortunate enough to work with somebody that really had done it a lot. And it was just like that when when you're in that bottom swing of a turnaround and the company's profitable and you're coming back out of it, it was always, okay, we got payroll covered. And then you go the next thing and you go, okay, this is what we're doing. And every vendor knew exactly how we were going to pay and what we were going to do, because we had talked to the major vendors. They knew exactly what was going to happen. And every week we would tell them what was coming and before anything went. And it is that cash flow is so critical in business.
I mean, I remember we had a client where we were doing cash flow daily for a while. It was pretty, it was very, very tight. Somehow you always figure out how to manage through it, and a lot of it has to do with communications with your vendors and your customers. And that's why, I always look at our customers and our vendors from a relationship perspective versus transactional mindset, right? It's like we're all working together in one business community. I want my vendors to be successful. I want my customers to be successful. And I would hope that they'd have the same for me. And when times get rough, we work together to make sure that we help each other out to get through it. But if you look at it as I want to stick it to you for the best deal and stick it over here to you, and and you look at it as a transaction, it makes your business career a little bit more challenging.
Yep. And that really is because sometimes it's not a big deal for a customer to pay you a week ahead if they had to, or if you had to tell a supplier, hey, I need to wait a week because of, something happened, and
Yep.
then, make sure that's going to happen. But it's a business community, and these are long-term relationships typically that you're going to have with someone and or their company. And that is how you get through these things.
Yep. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. So what's fun in your world? Citrin Cooperman, what are you guys focusing on for 2026? It's going to be a good year.
Yeah. Our I think we're in a really good spot. I mean, I think that, or I know, our focus is the small mid-market business
Mm-hmm.
community. We do, in some cases we might, compete with the big four, but in most cases it's, our core is our clients that, business owners, entrepreneurs, they've grown their business, they've been successful, they're looking at taking their business to the next level. Maybe they're looking at what the next steps are in their career, their life, etc. And so, I think I'm cautiously optimistic for 2026. I think coming into 25, um, I think, we were all thinking, hey, this is going to be great. I think the tariffs kind of put a little spook in the market and then the economy and in the business community. But I think there's a backlog of some real good companies out there. I think we're going to see an uptick in, um, you know, in M&A, merger acquisition type activity
Mm-hmm.
as we move forward into 2026. With that comes opportunities for everybody, I think.
Yeah.
So what I always talk to my clients about is, even if you're not looking to sell your business tomorrow or today, it's always important to run your business to be thinking about how we maximize business valuation,
Mm-hmm.
and the value of your business, right? So know how your business is valued in the market, and then how do you maximize that valuation? And what I mean by that is, in manufacturing, it's a lot of times you're being acquired based on what they call a multiple of EBITDA, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
EBITDA is your net income, and you add back, depreciation, interest, amortization, etc. And so if you have a $10 million company and your EBITDA is 2 million, you have 20% EBITDA, let's say. And in manufacturing, they'll pay, in your industry, the range might be between, if you were to be acquired, a buyer might pay somewhere between 4 and 8 times EBITDA, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
Well, 4 and 8 times, that's a big amount. Like, if it's 4 times EBITDA and you have 2 million, you're selling for 8 million.
Yeah.
If it's 8 times EBITDA, you're selling for 16 million. So same revenue, same EBITDA, but you're getting paid twice as much as the low end, right? So what does that mean, and how do we as a business owner, how do we look at our business to say, okay, I want to be at close to the 8 times
Yeah.
valuation, not the 4. And so what does that mean? I mean, some of the easy examples would be, if 70% of my revenue was one client, well, that's the buyer's going to discount your business because there's a lot of risk.
Mm-hmm.
So the
Mm-hmm.
buyer's always looking at risk when they look to acquire. And so the most you can de-risk your business, through, obviously client concentration, uh, maybe product mix, maybe where you sell, maybe industries that you sell into.
Mm-hmm.
Another big one we see is reliance on owner, and meaning,
Yep.
if I'm the owner and I haven't built up a management team around me, and I'm the number one salesperson, and I manage, all of the operational sides of the business, what value is there if I actually leave? Is there value in the business, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And so, building that management structure and that foundation infrastructure around you, so
Mm-hmm.
that, hey, if I sell, I can walk away and the business can run on its own. Those are
Mm-hmm.
the most valuable businesses as well. So those are just some kind of nuggets that I've seen, that we like to work with our clients on as they move forward, looking at,
Yeah.
maybe, should I exit or should I not?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a big decision, and I think it's great for you to be bringing up the clients, because it's a multi-year process really to get ready to sell a business, and most people
Yep.
don't understand that, and because it does affect everything from the suppliers we use, the customers we have, how much the owner's involved in the business, and even things, as we discussed earlier, how many inventory turns we get. If I have 1 inventory turn a year, or if I have 10 inventory turns a year, that's drastically different in the amount of cash that it requires to operate the business. There's all those things that make a big difference. So
Yep. Yeah,
that's
for sure.
Yeah. Well, Jason, it's been awesome talking with you today. I just appreciate you so much stopping by and talking about, what you guys are doing there at Citrin Cooperman, and talking about manufacturers and some of the key metrics they really need to understand, and just going through some of the real world things that you see in manufacturers that you guys are helping with their accounting and their monthly stuff and just their financials overall and their financial management, really.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, what's important is companies that get to a point is, do they have the right financial, and accounting leadership, whether that's internally from a team, that's beyond the bookkeeper, right?
Yes.
But somebody that has that sophistication that can drive things forward, can provide those insights, can work with you on the reporting, because ultimately to get to that next level, you're going to need that, whether it's to make decisions or even if you want to ultimately exit, you're going to be asked for that information.
Yep. Good stuff. Well, thanks so much for being here today. I want to thank Liz. Thanks for stopping by today and dropping a comment. These are great reminders. Thank you. That's what she had to say. And I can see we had other people there listening. Thank you so much for out there watching us. If you got in late and you want to hear it all, get back to the beginning and listen to Jason from the beginning. Because if you are a manufacturer and wondering, well, maybe what are some of the things I should be worrying about, he dropped a lot of golden nuggets in there. So we're out for now. Jason, hang out and we'll finish up offline.
All right. Thanks.